Today, we're really getting into minoxidil, specifically the commitment level. What happens if you stop? And, what else is even out there?
Yeah, and the sources are, well, they're pretty clear. Minoxidil works for AGA, androgenetic alopecia. It's effective. But, and this is the key thing, it's just managing symptoms. It's absolutely not a cure for the underlying genetics or hormones.
So it has to be continuous.
Exactly. Indefinite use is needed to keep whatever progress you've made.
Okay, so let's dig into that. This idea of a lifelong commitment. How is it acting like external support? What's the mechanism that makes the hair so dependent so quickly?
Well, think of it like creating this artificially enriched environment for the hair follicle. Minoxidil is mainly a potassium channel opener. What that does is cause localized vasodilation.
So widening the blood vessels right there in the scalp?
Precisely. It forces those tiny blood vessels open, basically flooding the base of the follicle, the dermal papilla, with more oxygen, more nutrients. And this extra supply, it kind of jumpstarts things. It shortens the resting phase, the telogen phase, and pushes the follicle into the growth phase, anagen. It's essentially overriding its genetic program, but only while the drug is present.
And I saw this detail, kind of surprising, that minoxidil isn't even active right away. It's a prodrug.
Yes, exactly. And that's really important for understanding why results can vary so much between people. Minoxidil itself is inactive. It has to be inverted into its active form, which is monoxidil sulfate, and that conversion happens right there in the scalp by a specific enzyme called SILT1A1.
SILT1A1. Okay.
Yeah, and if someone has low activity of that enzyme, well, they just can't activate the drug effectively. That's the main reason some people are considered non-responders. Their body doesn't have enough of the machinery.
Right, that makes sense. So if this external life support, this SLT1A1 activated support, is suddenly switched off, what actually happens? Why are the sources so insistent that you will lose the hair? That it's just reversion not making the underlying AGA worse?
Because the effect is purely local.
Yeah.
And totally dependent on the drug being there. The timeline is pretty predictable, almost unavoidable, really. Within about 3 to 6 months of stopping, you're going to see a complete loss of basically any hair that was gained or even just maintained by the minoxidil.
Wow, 3 to 6 months. That's fast.
It is. Physiologically, what happens is those blood vessels just constrict right back to their normal size, that enriched environment. Gone. And all those hairs that were being propped up by minoxidil, they start to shed, often in a very noticeable synchronized wave.
Okay, I can see why that would cause panic. People must feel like, oh no, I've crashed my hair, I made it worse. But
Yeah.
You're saying it's just reverting. Why is that shed so synchronized then? Doesn't that imply the drug changed something fundamental?
Well, it shows the drug was working effectively while you used it. That synchronization is proof of its impact. The feeling of it getting worse or accelerating is really twofold. First, you have that rapid synchronized shed of all the hairs that depended on minoxidil. Second, the underlying hair loss pattern is basically just catching up to where it naturally would have progressed if you'd never started the treatment.
Okay, so it feels faster because it's shedding and revealing the underlying progression simultaneously.
Exactly. The end result is simply returning to your natural genetic path. But yeah, experiencing that rapid loss all at once is definitely jarring.
So the key takeaway then is you need a strategic exit if you want to stop. If minoxidil isn't the permanent fix, what's the main alternative? How do you step off that treadmill?
Right. The core strategy really involves looking at treatments that target the root cause. That primarily means 5-alpha reductase inhibitors.
Like finasteride or dutasteride.
Exactly. Finasteride, dutasteride, they work differently. They actually lower the levels of the hormone dihydrotestosterone, DHT, which is the main driver of AGA. So minoxidil helps the environment around the follicle, but these drugs, they address the hormonal problem itself.
Okay, so if someone wants to switch, say, from minoxidil to finasteride, what's the protocol? How do you avoid that big shed, that cessation cascade?
The absolute key is
Yeah.
you cannot just stop minoxidil cold turkey. That's almost guaranteed to cause significant shedding. The standard recommendation, the best approach, is a planned overlap. You need to start the new therapy, like finasteride, and stay on it for at least 3 to 6 months before you fully stop the minoxidil.
3 to 6 months overlap. Got it.
Yeah, that overlap period gives the finasteride or whatever DHT blocker you're using time to start working to stabilize the follicles hormonally before you remove the minoxidil support. It helps mitigate that big shed you'd otherwise see.
And things like transplants.
Hair transplants are, of course, an option for moving permanent hair. But it's important to remember, even with a transplant, you often still need medical therapy like finasteride to protect the other hair, the native hair around the transplant, because AGA keeps progressing in those areas.
Right, the underlying condition is still there.
Still there.
Okay, that distinction is really clear now. Minoxidil as external support for the environment, DHT blockers tackling the actual hormonal cause. So, considering this huge commitment for minoxidil, possibly lifelong, what should someone's expectation for success really be long term?
That's a really important point to reflect on, actually. Think about this. Minoxidil often shows its most noticeable effect like regrowth in the first year or so. After that, the long-term benefit is really more about maintenance. It's about slowing down the inevitable progression of AGA, which continues relentlessly underneath. So how does that reality, that need for lifelong application just to maintain, shift your personal definition of success? Does it move from expecting regrowth to maybe accepting success as just slowing down that genetic clock, something to consider?